Hey folks, welcome to another episode of the Shut Up and Do It podcast. Place you can come hang out with us while we go through all things real estate, business, and self-fulfillment with a focus on bringing you top quality speakers, all who believe in a get-it-done manner. I'm your host, Nick Allerud, principal with the AA Real Estate Group and creator of the Complete Deal Flow System and owner of a bunch of rentals based in the New England markets. Today, I have my colleague on, and this gentleman I'm pretty excited to have on because he has the solution that every real estate investor needs to experience and understand. I've been in this business for about 15 years, and literally it wasn't up until this past January where this gentleman, along with someone he's just aligned with, really kicked me in the chest and said, "What the hell are you doing with your life?" And I'm going to let him talk a little bit more about that. But Dave is a founder of Simple CFO. He is passionate about helping real estate investors achieve financial wealth through understanding their numbers and understanding their businesses. And he was aligned with a couple of big name players, along with being an investor himself. He helped run businesses with over 300 deals and transactions a year. And he's also just aligned himself with a killer co-author, which I'm sure I'll let him talk about the really cool part about what he's up to, but it's really darn exciting. So David, I'm super happy to have you on the show, man.
Yeah, I'm super happy to be here too. I love talking to the real estate community, especially about what we're talking about today. So very privileged to be on here.
You got it. And because we just did a whole 5 minutes without being recorded, this is a take two, hoping everybody understands that, we had a little bit of rehearsal, but that's okay. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But Dave, would love to hear a little bit about your story and how you got to where you are today.
Sure. Rich dad, poor dad, like almost every other investor. I read that in college. So I had to go out and do something after reading. I was tired of reading, so I wanted to actually do something. So I went and bought a house before I was married and fixed that house up, flipped it, and then lived in it for 2 years, then put a rent-to-own tenant in there after we moved. And then he cashed me out 6 months later. He paid on time and then cashed me out. So I was like, I need to keep doing stuff like this. So I aligned with a company that was a little bit, probably 5 to 10 employees. So they were a decent sized company. They were doing about 80 wholesale deals a year. And then by the time I had left, we were at our highest point. We were doing about 300 deals a year between wholesaling, fixing and flipping, turnkeys, rentals, rent-to-owns, sub-twos. So we were doing everything and anything in between and doing about 30 deals a month. And I got to sit in every single seat there. So from the sales and marketing to the acquisitions to project management, property management, the accounting, every single thing that you could think of, I got to sit there. And then I was doing my deals on the side too. I had my own rentals and they were coming in, providing the passive income. So that was awesome too, just learning through that whole process. So it was really, really neat experience going through that. I was there for about 5 years. Saw a ton in the real estate world. That was where we did over 800 deals during that time too. So including the ones I had done on my own too. So that was a really great experience. So I was really appreciative of that company. And then I moved to another area, the Richmond area, about 2 years ago and started helping another investor. And then one of the big things we did was help him realize where he was financially and really get a grasp on his numbers. He was doing flips and he was doing rentals, had a pretty decent sized portfolio, and really nailing down those numbers and really getting him to where he knew where he needed to be. And that was life-changing for him. And he even told me that one time, what you did has changed our life. And he even encouraged me then and a couple other people at that time to help more investors with that, with knowing their numbers, but getting financial clarity in their business, really being clear on where they stood. And that's why I launched Simple CFO, is to help real estate investors really get financial clarity and help them and implement Profit First. The Profit First system, if you've heard of that book, and if you've heard of that whole system, that's really what I help implement with the real estate investors. And it's an awesome system. I'm sure we'll go into it maybe a little bit more in this podcast, but that's just a little quick overview of who I am and what I've done in the real estate world.
That's awesome. Let's go back to the beginning real estate investor, right? When they start their business, they're a solopreneur and they just took a seminar, or they just read Rich Dad Poor Dad, or they just, they think they know everything that's going on, and they go off and they find their own property, probably on the MLS through a broker, which brokers just make people broke, but we don't talk about that here. And they got their first deal done, right? And they come out and they receive this check at closing. It's for $48,000.72. They're like, I just made $48,072. Right. So let's go to step one. If you come into, an investor's office and well, maybe they're not needing you at step one, but I'm sure they still do, right? Is step one, how do you identify, like, what are the top 3 steps to go through to identify where they're at?
As far as like what in their finances and being clear
Yeah,
on
like
that
they don't even know, like you say, how much money did you make on this flip? And they're like, well, I got this check for 58,000, but that doesn't count their down payment of, 50 grand and then all the realtor commissions and like all that. Is there like an interview that you have with people to sort of show them if they are financially yet in their business or not? Or I'm just trying to get a feel for the basics first before we jump into profit first.
Yeah, usually when I first talk with someone, we're trying to gauge where they are, like in their actual real estate career, and if they've been managing books. Like if it's someone like that who's just getting started, the first thing I tell them is like, okay, make sure you actually have someone who's doing your books who knows real estate, so that way you know how much of that check is really your profit and how much of it, are you needing to pay back a lender, or you needed to like pay back a line of credit first, or is that all the profit? Is that really the profit that you made on this deal? So because you're going to find out as a new investor, there's definitely a difference between the check that you got in your hand and the actual profit from the property too, because there's a lot of different factors that factor in there. So like he was saying, down payments, or whether it be like you funded the property from lines of credit and need to pay some of that back, or you got a private money loan, and just all the different things that can go into a real estate deal. So really seeing, number one, do you have financial clarity? Do you know that number? Do you have that system in place? And if you don't, that's one of the things we help do for sure. But that's kind of the thing I'm gauging first is, do you have that grasp on your numbers? Are you getting some of the very, very base things as a real estate investor that you need in order to be successful?
Awesome. And I'm going to take that a step further. My second year in real estate, most people know, I had a really horrible first year with a, tough partnership out of state. I won't tell that story here, but if you haven't, I have that book, Don't Quit, for stories of persistence, courage, and faith. For those of you, that's a shameless plug in my own podcast, so I did that anyway.
There you go.
I'm going to take that one step further. So my second year, my restart into real estate, when I still didn't quite know my numbers as well as I should have, I will say that I'm like, all right, well, I figured out what my actual profit is, because it's the ARV. I'm going to take out like holding costs and rehab and the realtor commission and whatever's left over. I mean, that I've got my profit down, but I didn't see coming April 15th of that next year.
Yep, there you go.
And I didn't. What is this? Ordinary income tax? You're taking how much away? This is ridiculous. And where is that money? I don't have it. So December 31, it showed that number that I had made, for that year. And I'm like, damn, I had a good year. But where does that money go, Dave? Where does that money go?
Right? And that's where we get into profit first. That's where you need that system. I would encourage investors from day one, if it's your first deal, setting up profit first for yourself. And then it's that much easier going forward and actually implementing that system, because profit first forces you to save for taxes throughout the year, for calculating, okay, how much from this deal really needs to go towards taxes. So that's a little bit of a glimpse into profit first there. But yeah, especially if you're doing in the flips and you're in the sales end of it, and then you need to know that day of reckoning is coming. Now this year was July 15th because of the weirdness of 2020. And the coronavirus and everything that's happened here. But usually it's April 15th and you know that date is coming. So you might as well be saving from your deals and be thinking in years and not just in deal to deal, and thinking of like making your business, an actual business, a long-term business. And that's really one of the key strengths of Profit First, is making you have a system for your current finances.
Brilliant. Before I even heard of Profit First, and next I want you to get into literally the mechanics behind it.
Will do.
But before I'd even heard of Profit First, I got dinged real hard that first year on my tax bill. And I remember I was the next 2 years trying to catch up from that first tax bill that I was trying to hit from. And then as it turns out, and all of you wholesalers and rehabbers, that are on these podcasts, it's something that not many people teach you about. Like, they're teaching you how to market, they're teaching you how to do direct mail, they're teaching you how to pick up the phone and dial. They're not teaching you how to manage your finances. And this is something that, Dave has come to learn, right? I mean, I'm assuming even some of your bigger clients that have turned it into a business, probably some of them needed some significant help, right?
Very much so. That is so true. I've seen businesses doing, those dozens of deals in a month and still need this help because no one at the top really had that training. In a lot of the circles that we run in, that's not sexy, that's really not. But honestly, that's what I'm here to change. Because to me, keeping more money in my pocket is sexy. Being able to actually, you're going to go out there and kill yourself getting these deals, and then you're going to let it go by the wayside and like just blow all that money and say, where in the world did it all go? As an investor, it's way better to know that like, hey, I'm going out to eat. And guess what? This is coming from the actual profit and not just like the private money loan that I just got to fund my business, you know, my operating expenses for this month. So it's like, that's where I want to totally change the investing world on its head and say like, yes, not only do you need the marketing and sales, you need that engine, but you need to have that hole in your bucket and totally cemented. So that way, you know that you can keep that profit and not just be reinvesting in your business all the time. Another way for saying, I have no idea how much my operating expenses really are, and I'm just flying by the seat of my pants. So it's like, yes, you do need to reinvest and like do that stuff, but you need to be and do it smart and be a profitable business. And that's where it gets fun. That's where it gets me fired up. Like, you want, as an investor, you got into this business to make money and to be profitable. I'm sorry, like I don't see many real estate investors that have a nonprofit as their primary business. I know some very good real estate investors that have nonprofits on the side and they give to it, but none of them as their main driving profitable business, that engine. You started your business to be profitable. That's why you need to know your finances and manage them and have that clarity, because you want to be able to save and keep that money and then be able to actually reinvest with your profit and know where it's actually going, or take that trip that you always wanted to take and live the life that real estate investing, why Rich Dad Poor Dad was so exciting to you, because you could see that end goal. That's what the managing your finances will give you. It will give you those trips. It will give you that peace at night saying that I know where my finances are. I know that I have a plan and that I can get there. So that's where I'm excited, because I want to get that information and want to just totally flip it where it's not that hard to learn this side. You just need to know, just like you learned marketing and sales, there are steps to know the finances without you having to actually do the finances and you just getting the reports you need. So that's why I'm excited, because anyone can learn it just like the marketing and sales side.
That's brilliant. There's a line that a couple of my partners say. We run a networking group, and because we never actually made a profit, it wasn't built to make a profit, but we would always say, like, we are not a nonprofit on purpose. And that's what real estate investors, you know, if you're not making a profit, the worst part is not knowing if you're making a profit or not. Right. But you can always say that the first couple of years. You're not a nonprofit on purpose. And you said right. Sellers. Yeah. So David Richter is bringing sexy back, as he just said. He's going to make this sexy. So Dave, I want you to explain, I mean, I'll give a really quick background of my experience with this, right? So I'm going to let you even talk about this book, but there was a book that had come out a while ago. It was mainly geared towards real estate agents, I would say. Was that accurate, or was it?
At the beginning? Yeah, probably more service-based businesses. Mm-hmm.
Service-based businesses. And reading this book it's like, all right, well, it doesn't apply to me because, and all right, this is kind of interesting, but I mean, how is this even possible, right? And I'm going to let David talk about the mechanics of what this is now called, which is the profit first method. David, let's bring sexy back, man. Share us with us how this works.
So Profit First is that book by Mike Michalowicz. He's the author, and it literally outlines a system for managing your current finances and making it to where you're going to be able to be a profitable business, and glaring neon red signs there in your business. So the first thing he talks about, the first principle of Profit First, is smaller plates. In America, the bigger our plate sizes got, the more we ate, the more calories we consumed, and the bigger we get. So he gives that example in the book, and it's the same thing in a real estate company too. You have one bank account where all the money goes in, and you think you have this big plate to eat off of, and then as much as you have on the plate, you're going to eat. If you have a smaller plate, you're not going to eat as much. So what he recommends, instead of having one big pot where all your money goes in and goes right back out, you apportion that money that goes into different bank accounts, meaning like you have income comes in, and then you set up 5 foundational accounts: the profit account, the owner's compensation account, the tax account, and the operating expense, and then the income account where like the money is actually sitting until it's transferred to those 4 other accounts. So those are the primary accounts in Profit First, where you know that every single dollar is going to be apportioned over profit, over your taxes, to save throughout the year. What Nick was saying when he got that big tax bill that he was saving for, that you should be saving throughout the year, and from deal to deal, instead of saying it's April 15th, I need to go do 2 deals right now to cover my tax bill. So saving into profit, your tax account, your owner's compensation, and the operating expenses. So you literally take it and that money goes into the income account. So let's say you're a flipper or a wholesaler. that property profit, the true property profit from your books, you take that money that comes into your account and then you apportion it over different percentages into those accounts and say, what do I really need to run my business in the operating expenses? What percentage of profit, because it's profit first. He also tells in the book the formula for an accountant is usually sales minus expenses equals profit, meaning whatever I sell, what I have left over will be the profit after I pay everyone else first. But with profit first, it's sales minus profit equals expenses. So I take in income, I pay myself first. The first allocation I make is that profit account, which could be a small percentage, but it has to be something. And then from there, you're taking it, and then whatever's left over is what you have to pay for your expenses. So it really flips it on its head, saying, this system now, I'm going to not only be a profitable business, I'm going to pay myself first, make sure that I'm healthy as the owner, make sure that we've got enough to sustain myself in this business. And then whatever I have left over, I need to figure out how to make my business run. So it's literally about setting up the bank accounts and then allocating them as the income comes in. Mike suggests in the book, like rhythms, like on the 10th and 25th, you do the allocations. It really depends though. If you're in a real estate business having transactions every week, I would do it at least once a week then when you physically do transfers into those accounts. And then figuring out what percentages really work for your business. Sitting down and saying, here's where I am currently. Mike gives great percentages, targets in his book of where you should be, and then saying, this quarter is where I ended. Last quarter, this is where I was, 80% in operating expenses or whatever the crazy number might be. So then from there, it's taking it and saying that 80% or whatever the operating expenses, what can I get that down to next quarter? So Nick, you started sharing your screen. Is this the visual, right?
This is not a David Richter approved slide. This is you were talking and I'm a very visual person. So while you were talking, I was trying to give something, even though this is not relevant, right? Like feel free to just go over this one more time so people who are visual can see it while you're doing it.
So that operating account, you see that money at the top, that's like the income. That would be like your property profit. There's your check. There's the check that everyone waves on wholesaling houses full time and all these other groups that are on Facebook. You know, you've got the check that you've made. You know what the real profit is from that check after you have financial clarity, that real first step. So you take that profit and then you have an income account where it goes into. Then that income account holds that money and then it actually pushes it. You do transfers into like the profit account where he has there the profit account, the owners pay, the taxes, the government, you know, and then the operating expenses. He takes that money, transfers it to those other accounts by percentages, so that way you can see this is what I'm really going to have at the end of the month, you know, or like this is what I'm going to have in the different bank accounts, or at the end of this deal, I should say. The end of this deal, I made $20,000, or let's make it a real easy number. I made $10,000 on this wholesale deal. So like 2,000 would go to profit, you know, or let's say 200, I guess I would say for in this case. Then 3,000 would go in owner's pay, 1,500 to the taxes, 13 to that other account, and then the rest would be the operating expenses, like to run the business. So that's where that money would sit. You're literally taking the money that comes in, apportioning it over bank accounts, because let's be honest, most investors have that one big account. They have that one big account that they pay everything out of, and then you go through all of that money, and then you have no idea what's really yours and what's really other people's, what's really your profit and what really you need to pay your expenses from. So that's why, just from the owner's point of view, you probably look at your bank accounts way more than you'll look at your QuickBooks account unless you know how to manage your finances. So I would say if you need to look at your bank accounts, then make a system for it like this. So that way you can see exactly where that's going, exactly where the money needs to be. So the other thing I would say too is, not on this slide, but having another account as a real estate investor outside of the whole transfers and allocations, for if you're doing flips or anything where you're getting private money to fix up a house to sell, I would create another account called like a rehab account or repairs account or OPM account, you know, and other people's money account, to take that money in and then use it specifically for projects that you're in the middle of. So that way you're not mingling your own finances, your own operating expenses with that private lender's funds. That's beneficial on several levels. You can now see if you run out of money in that account, that repairs account, then you know you're going to have to pull from your operating expenses. And then you know that you now are over budget on these projects, and you know that you're now having to take from your own money, fund those deals and fund those rehabs. The other benefit is it's in a totally separate account. If you're a newer investor wanting to build credibility, that's another credibility piece to say, hey, one of the things I do is I run on profit first. What I do is I manage my finances like this. If you tell a private lender that, I think you'll knock their socks off. You'll jar them and be like, okay, what in the world? I've never heard of this, or like this guy cares enough to actually manage the finances and know my money's going to be taken care of. It's going into its own repairs account. So, we do the expenses from that account. So that's just another thing that I would suggest as a real estate investor, besides the foundational accounts that you use to operate your own business.
Gotcha. This is awesome, Dave. So the ultimate point of all this, as David has pointed out, is that sales minus profit equals expense, right? So that's the formula, right? He and you have switched that formula from income minus expense equals profit.
Right. Yeah.
Right? It's now income minus profit equals expense.
Right.
And I think that's the biggest thing for me as an investor to get my head around. So essentially, if I didn't have the money, this is what everybody's thinking, right? So we're going through this. 10,000 comes in to bank one, as we're seeing on this visual, which, forgive my text and all that stuff. There's 10,000 comes into bank one. Automatically, these allocations that you have set, 2% goes into a profit, and these are just made up allocations, right? I'm sure, Dave, if they work with you, you're going to have specific tailored recommendations for them, right?
Exactly.
So, $200 of that 10,000, this is the true profit of that deal. Now, getting to that true profit, I think, is step one, which Dave said is like the clarity, which still is the hardest part to begin with. Once you know that true profit number, 10,000 goes in. We've got the allocations of first going to profit, next going to an owner's pay, right, of 30%. So that would be about $3,000. Mm-hmm. Taxes would be about $1,500. And the HST, which of course I forget already what that stands for. Do you even know what that stands for? This is some random slide I pulled.
This looks like another slide from something else, because usually it's just that other account's the operating expenses. So it's like then the rest of that money is to run the business. That's what you now have to run the business on. So it's like whatever's left over now after you've allocated those, that's what you have to run the business. That's your marketing. That's your everything. That's for people. And that's what's so powerful here too, is so many people in the real estate world think, oh, I've got to hire, I've got to do this. But it's like, do you know if you can hire and still make money? Like, you need to take care of the business. The business is there to serve you. You don't want to be in a business where you go in every single day and hate. I was just on a call yesterday with another investor who, like, before they ran profit first, was like, hiring like crazy and whatnot. And then they got to the point where they implemented profit first, and they realized through that they had 7 too many people on their team. And now this year, they are 5 times more profitable with 7 less people, doing the same amount of deals, even more deals, and actually doing that because the profit first opened their eyes to being like, what is really profitable and an investment in my business? So it's like taking that and knowing what is it going to take to truly be profitable, especially if you're already an investor and you're already down that road and you already have a lot of people on the team. It's hard. It's going to force you to think like a true business owner and say, is everyone on my team profitable? And is everyone on my team in the right seat? Is everyone on my team bringing in what it needs to in order to make this business run? Because that's one of the biggest things in the business is the people that are in those seats. So it's just very eye-opening. And so now this investor this year, like I said, is 5 times more profitable, has 7 less people, and said to me on that call, like, I am the least stressed. I love my business now. A year ago, I hated it. It was absolutely terrible. But like this year, like, I love my business. That we've got the right people in the right seat, and we've got the finances. Every single deal that comes in, we're allocating where it needs to go, and we have reserves. And now they're sitting in a much better position because they're literally doing a system like this. You've probably heard of this system before as a human being, because if you've heard of the envelope system, like that your grandma might have done, or that, if you're a Dave Ramsey fan or something, this is a lot like that, where you're literally setting it up to say, I'm going to be profitable. I'm going to make sure that I can pay myself. I'm going to make sure that I save for the taxes throughout the year. So that's what this system is all about. And it's a truly eye-opening system. And like I said, that investor from a year ago was super stressed. And now knowing where they were really supposed to be versus where they were, they have no stress in their business. I'm sure that they do like on deals or whatnot, but as far as like managing their finances, knowing that they're okay, especially during COVID and like during a recession or whatever might come in the future too, having that financial peace, really being peaceful about saying like, here's where I am. And I know that now we could handle some storms here. So that to me was really powerful. And this was just yesterday talking to another person that's implemented profit first in their business.
Perfect. This is awesome, Dave. As all of you guys know at this point, I've been operating for 15 years and did not operate at this level. Actually, what happened is, first couple of years, we did, 3 deals, and we did 6 deals, and we did, 12 deals, and deals kept coming in, but money kept going right back out. And I'm embarrassed to say that might have been the case even up to like last year, where let's go up to, doing 60 deals in a year. And then you go and say, where did all the cash go? Well, it's in the properties, it's in the inventory, it's in the acquisitions, and it comes in, it goes right back out.
Yep.
This system sort of forces you, right, to operate as a business, even if you don't want to, right? It's taking the money away from the entrepreneurs, the people who are obsessed with the deal, the people who love to hunt, the people who love to be on that grind and say, yes, and let's close one more. And it says, gee, stop for a second. Can you afford to hire that 8th hire? Can you afford to scale up to that person? And that's why I appreciate just adding, sort of making it, driving the point home for you on that one, Dave.
Yeah.
And also on the bottom, I added these 2 buckets here. And this is sort of something that I did. And Dave, I think you said you liked this. I'm hoping you liked it. Because I kept pushing all of our cash into new deals, I decided to make another account called inventory. So we are now allocating a percentage to inventory with every single bit of revenue that comes in, so that next time there's a new deal, I can pull from this account and I don't have to pull it from the operating account anymore, it takes it away from payroll, takes it away from growth and advancement, takes it away, from the things we need to actually sustain the business.
Yep.
And the last one we did have is we were having issues, not issues per se, but we always wanted to have like a massive line of credit. Yeah. And we have different lines of credit, a lot of little ones. We never got like one big one. And it was because they would always kind of look at our bank accounts and be like, I don't understand. You've got like $1 million in January and now you have like $38 in March. I don't understand your balance. So we've also implemented this cash build account, which isn't even going to be used. We're going to be trying to keep this one purely as cash so that we can hopefully get banks to loan against that cash account, right? Like, again, just to open up those lines of credit and have that as an asset on our balance sheet to then look good. I didn't mean to take the spotlight away from you, but I'm just sort of if that helps other investors.
Yeah. Because as long as you have the foundation of the system, that's the first step. But then going advanced and being like how like Nick did in his business, setting up the accounts that matter to him, because now he's able to put that inventory in its own account and not take away from his operating expenses. So that's the power of this system. You're not boxed in by like, oh, I just need to do these foundational accounts. No, open up the accounts for what matters to you. And like, really, what are you going to be saving? Maybe you have one in there for bonuses or like a giving account or like whatever it might be for your business, like for inventory, cash build. Those are awesome. And that's what Nick needs to do. But that's like, that could be for you too, or you could have specific accounts that you have personal goals. Then it's like every single deal that comes in, then it's apportioned to that across those percentages. And now he's saving. Now it was important to him. And now he knows every single deal that comes in, a portion of it's going to those accounts, and he'll be building up that cash reserves and the inventory account. And, that's peace of mind. That's what it is. It gives you peace of mind to say, I'm managing my finances and I know I'm going to have the money when I need it.
That's awesome. If anyone's like me, and I was embarrassed to even talk about that 15 years in the business and not really understanding this concept, I have a feeling that you see very successful companies that may have been shit shows when you started working with them. And you don't have to say any names, but I would like it just to give some people some confidence, right? Like, Are you willing to share like one or two of like some nightmare stories that you saw when you entered into a client and what steps were taken to fix it?
I will tell you. And before I even go to the story, I venture to say that real estate investors in general, I would say 95% are probably don't have financial clarity. I think it's that high, that percentage. Don't have that. So you are definitely not alone. If you're listening to this podcast, watching it, you are not alone in that. Tell you a great story. So I was working with a client. They didn't have financial clarity. They had no idea. They had like their rough profit and loss, but it doesn't tell the whole story. So we came in there and really helped them and trained like the bookkeeper and really got the numbers to be like, they got financial clarity. Well, I had a call with them, and one of our calls, like after we got the final numbers in and like we could actually tell them, and they had lost big time. And this was just in 2019, so like they had lost in 2019 quite a bit of money on their business for the whole year. And the owner hung up on me, just slammed the phone down, like I always picture, like the corded phones, and he slammed it down. It was just a cell phone, so I'm sure he just pushed the button. But
accept bad news in this office.
Exactly. It was bad. I mean, I was like, oh man, like, and I'm just stunned there. Yeah, okay, sorry. So I gave him a couple hours to cool off, and after that, and then I text him and say, hey, do you want to get on another call here, and just go over this? And then he called me back all sheepishly, like, man, that's not you. I didn't know where we were, and then that was frustrating to see where we are, blah, blah, blah. So he looked at those numbers, but then he did something about it. He actually was able to turn it all around, and it actually has a really good ending. So we'll get there. So first, he had to go through that very painful experience of just knowing the numbers. But then it gave it power in his hand to say, this is where I am. I need to turn this around. Something needs to change. Honestly, it helped him gain focus in his business. He was able to say, these are the things that aren't working. I'm going to stop doing this type of deal, start doing this. And now he took action. Like it was him. He took action with his company. And this year, up through the first half of this year, he has sold more deals than all of 2019. He's also been more profitable per deal. And he's also been like, he's blown everything, like the profit, the overall deal profit, he's doubled so far. Like as far as his actual, like the whole profit of each deal, the total property profit. So like his net profit's sitting way better now, but that's because he had to get through that first portion, and it was painful. If you're already in the back of my head, like there's no way I'm doing this because I already know it's horrible. But that gives you the power to put it in your hand though, to be able to actually do something about it. You read these books to be profitable. You read these books, you started this company, you did what you needed to do to be a profitable business owner. So this guy literally going from hanging up the phone to where we just had another call last week saying, this is what we're going to allocate from your sales into these accounts, and being able to knock down some debt too. And like now he's taken a lot of his revolving debt. The first quarter he was able to pay off like 40 grand in like revolving debt. So like, but he was doing that because he had a plan and he knew where he stood. So that was at the beginning. It was rough and it was tough, and he got through it, but then he made that decision. It was him saying, I can do this. We can turn this around. And this year, it's night and day difference just with this system, and knowing that financial clarity is a huge first step, and then putting a system around it turbocharges it. It really does. So that's where he came from the jaws of defeat, and basically is more than covering what he lost in 2019.
There we go. That's huge. I reserve those phone calls when I slam the phone down for my CPA usually,
Nice.
until I found rentals. But yes. No, very, very good on this. I try to make a point in these podcasts to not bring up the word COVID or virus or economy and anything like that. But I am going to ask you this question, and I think it's an interesting conversation to have. Do you think that what has just happened to us with this COVID crisis, is this, make it a bigger need for people to get in line? Or do you think that the need was just basically always there, and it's always been a pandemic of lack of financial knowledge?
I think it's always been there, because I think it really is. The first big portion is that financial clarity, really knowing where you stand, and then putting a system around it. And I think this whole COVID, coronavirus, everything here has really exacerbated it. It's like blown it out of proportion. honestly, if people would have had this more in 2008 or 9, or like 2006, 7, around there, and had a system around their finances, they would have probably been able to see, like, I'm building up my cash reserves. I've got money, like, even if stuff turns upside down and my tax bill goes 3 times more, I'm still going to be able to handle, some of the things that came about. So it's the same thing here. It just, the hard times just make you really see, are you truly a business owner and not just flying by the seat of your pants because you can do it because the market's just good and a lot of other people can. It's things like this that really show you should have had this the whole time. But if you don't, now's the day to start it. I mean, if you're just a new investor or if you're an investor going through this whole thing, now is the day to start it. Now's the day to pick up that book and really dive into it and say, like, I need a system around my finances.
That's awesome, Dave. Speaking of books and speaking of other projects, is there anything that you're passionate about right now that you'd like to share with us?
Yes. If you can't tell, Profit First. So I actually, the author of Profit First, Mike Michalowicz, I just signed a deal with him to write the book Profit First for real estate investors specifically. So we're in the middle of it right now. I just finished part of the outline right now. I'm going through with the whole book editing process and like meeting with Mike and the team and like going through and submitting the outline and whatnot too. So going through all of that process, I'm really excited because we talk about a lot of the things we did today and then laying it out in the book format and really getting it into the hands of the real estate investors, because there is the nuances. There are those things that you might say from the original book, I don't see how that fits. But after implementing this with many businesses and seeing it work and seeing people's lives literally change and flipped upside down their business life, I need to get this information out. So I went to Mike and said, I think this would be great for the real estate investors. He was like, I think so too. So we have partnered on that. We're partners now on writing that book. I'm going to be writing that book and getting it to the market. Well, like they said, it's going to take a little bit of time just because of the whole editing process there, because they do it for real. Like this is a real book that's going to be coming out, that goes through that whole process. So I'm excited about that. So that's one of the big projects I have on my plate right now.
That is fantastic. So for those of you who are following this, right, there's the gentleman, Mike Michalowicz, who introduced everyone to the concept of this. David is now partnering with him on this next book, which is going to be specifically real estate investment focused, right?
Yep. Yes, sir.
So, very huge. So you can't plug it yet because there's nowhere to buy it yet. Is that accurate?
Yeah, exactly. So we're actually going to, though, have that's going to be one of the things. We're setting up the website right now, Profit First for Real Estate Investors, or profitfirstrei.net, will be live soon, because that's going to house when the book's going to be coming out, what are the things we have available, because we're also doing some webinars too for some people. So I want to get this information out before the book comes out. So we're going to be doing some of this before the book comes out, getting some of it in video format and giving actual resources too. So we're compiling a lot of that. Like I said, right now is a very busy time because we're also implementing this with businesses too right now and just seeing all the best practices. And really, I want to get that out en masse. So that way, like I said, we want to get Profit First and the financial clarity really in the hands of the real estate investors. So I've got a ton of projects that we're working on right now. A podcast too, Profit First for Real Estate Investors. Our first episode will launch by at least a week from this Friday. Nick's been on there too, so he's going to be one of the guests that's interviewed, and Nick did an awesome job. So I'm really excited about that too. Just any information we can get out. We have a Profit First for Real Estate Investors Facebook group too, specifically for real estate investors. So we're posting in there. We're posting resources, questions, anything that you have. So we have those too. It's a private group, so you have to search for it. There's some questions to get into that group, but if you're a part of this podcast, feel free to go there and search that, because we want to get the information out. So that's where we have some of our things right now as far as around the book and the Profit First for Real Estate Investors specifically.
Fantastic, Dave. What is the link so people can see your podcast?
The link to see the podcast, it's actually not launched yet on iTunes, but it's going to be called the Profit First REI podcast. So that's where it'll be. It'll be on iTunes. It'll be on all the major ones where, Stitcher, all the big ones. It's going to be out there, all the different places you can get the podcast. So we'll definitely do it. But as far as the website goes, that's profitfirstrei.net. If you go there right this today, you're going to see that it's still under construction because we're building all the back end and making sure that we have everything in place. But it's going to house the podcast on there too. It's going to house the coming soon for the book and when the release date will be. So we're going to be housing a lot of that information there. And eventually when we have the courses too, when they're all done, and all the resource documents we're going to be housing there for Profit First for real estate investors.
That is fantastic. And just so people know, if you're watching this right now, we tend to run about 2 to 3 weeks behind Dave on editing and production. So check those links out right now. We're going to put them in the show notes. And you definitely want to check out his podcast and go to that link to make sure you are first to be notified when this book and all of his webinars are coming out. That's pretty darn awesome. Dave, any parting life lessons or business lessons you want to give to the real estate investors, both new and experienced out there?
Sure. Yeah, get financial clarity. No, I think we beat that horse for sure. So, no, I would say the next thing is knowing yourself as a business owner. We could tend to compare ourselves a lot, especially in the real estate world, especially if you're in a mastermind, and really taking a step back and saying, is my business doing what it needs to do to make sure that I'm not killing myself each and every day, not having enough energy to play with my family or to do the things that really matter to you too. I'm sure your business matters to you 100%. But making sure that it's really serving you as a business owner. And that takes a lot of introspection and saying, okay, I see all these people at the mastermind, but what do I really want as a business owner? And taking that step back and saying, what is it that we're going after? Do I want to shoot for the moon and get there as fast as possible? Great, then do it. How can you get that plan in place? But if you're like, I don't need to do 100 deals in a year, I just need to do 10 and I'll be totally fine and I'll have exactly what I need. I'll be good with my family or whatever it is that's big in your life. I would say that's another big thing that I've seen is honestly having a system like this too. It forces you to be like, is my business really serving my why? You know, like, why am I here? Why did I start this business? And if it's just to make money, that might not sustain you for the rest of your life. So it's like, why did I start this? Why did I really do this? And taking a step back and saying, you know, is this really what I want to be doing, or is there something that needs to change?
That is fantastic advice. And not a lot of that is given, you know, when we're all type A entrepreneurs and, you know, out there trying to crush the moon, right?
Yep, exactly.
Take that step back. So well done, Dave. Wanted to thank you so much for being on the podcast today, sir. I know you're a busy guy too. And the best way for people to reach you, want them to go to those websites? Is that the best place?
There for information. If they want to work with us, it's simplecfosolutions.com. That's where we actually do the implementations of Profit First, where we give you the financial clarity either with your bookkeeper or a bookkeeper we suggest to make sure that you know where you stand. So that's really what we're all about at Simple CFO, gaining that financial clarity and actually implementing it with you alongside of you so you can have these type of stories like where you can actually be less stressed and really know where you stand. So that's simplecfosolutions.com. There's an apply button on there.
Fantastic. And those will also be in the show notes below. Wanted to thank you all for taking part in another episode of the Shut Up and Do It podcast, where we bring as much value as we can by sharing top quality guests and speakers, Mr. David Richter being one of those from Simple CFO. As you guys can tell, he's got a mad skill, and he's done his best to kind of impact real estate investors by kind of putting together his own company to help refine one of the most important skills as a business owner, right? Financial clarity, financial freedom, and ultimately, you know, gathering wealth building and really understanding where you need to allocate your funds to. So huge thank you to Dave Richter for his time today. Be sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons below if you like this podcast. And if you do want to be notified when the next one's coming out, feel free to head on over to Shut Up and Do It Real Estate for all the episodes. Thanks again for listening to another episode, and I will see you on the next one.